He gets a shot at a few more.
Yeah, and the new HarperCon led Elections Canada has indeed suddenly found all the paperwork to support those ballots that had previously been thrown out. So yeah, I mean, what do you think?
If you go right back to the beginning of this too, I just want to say that the first accusations were deeper. And I'm not saying that because they've been basically withheld. I think that legally, the Liberal candidate, I'm not even going to try to say his name, knew that his best bet was to go with the technicalities involving improper votes in some of these polls, people who were maybe living in either another riding and voting within that riding, because that was one of the big a lot of people use the address of a church that was listed within his riding, but it doesn't have a residence, and they may have lived outside the riding.
Now, as we know, Mike, because I've done this before, I've showed up to the polls and didn't have ID or anything to support the idea that I had the right to vote there, and I had to swear an affidavit to give me the right to vote, because I cannot deny you the right to vote. If you swear an affidavit saying this is who I am and I have the right to vote here, they have to accept it and let you vote. But if those affidavits don't exist, then how do you know what I mean? Then it could come down to this is a case of ballot box stuffing. If the sworn affidavits weren't there, you know what I mean?
So even though the Liberal candidate has choose to use the technical aspects of looking at what Elections Canada chose to accept as votes, there still could be some serious questions as to
here's the thing,
dirty ball being played.
I think it's more than a technicality, okay? I think it's if you don't have those sworn affidavits, then there's no other reasonable conclusion that that you can come to other than the fact that it's just ballot box stuffing, you know?
Exactly.
It's greater than a technicality.
The other thing that it's getting some mention, but it's usually somewhat twisted, is that it isn't unusual in any case. The way that the courts apparently have always approached this is if there are technical problems with any ballots, if the number of those ballots with technical problems is higher than the number that the total votes above. So in other words, he won by 26 votes. Now there's a problem with, like you said, in a testing of 10 polling stations or 10. So there's 79 problems. So right away, there's enough questionable ballots compared to the 26 votes that he won by that right away the whole election has to be brought into question. So it's been made to seem like it's kind of extreme, like the way that Stephen Harper always likes to play, and the Conservatives always like to play their questioning of Canadian democracy, whether it's the courts or Parliament or any sort of the functional aspects of the government that are operating. It's always like, well, it's undemocratic because now the courts are going to overturn an election. And yet,
it boils down to this: like, if we're going to have an election, we need the right guy to win. The guy that got the most fair votes, free from tampering, that guy wins. That's the thing. Like, the Conservatives are the grounds that they're actually fighting this case on is that the Liberals didn't have their paperwork in to dispute this within the 30-day allotment.
Yeah, they're looking at an even more a larger technicality.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wanted
that they're not right. It's like they're not even going to bring into question whether the accusations are true or not. They're just like, you didn't get it in on time.
Yeah, that's pretty bad, man. That is really bad. So if you really want to take a look at this situation, and it boils down to the status of our democracy. Like, I mean, to me right now, I think we should be asking for United Nations observers for our next election. Really, I mean, I want the United Nations.
That would be great if we could do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be nice, man. I mean, because right now who has confidence that we've got the right government? You know, we've been through this before on the show, and it's all over the place. I mean, their majority is slim, and the margin of victories in a lot of these ridings is slim. And
26 isn't even the high, isn't even the smallest.
No, 18 in my riding, and we have, and we're in our ridings being investigated. Well, I guess it was up until Stephen Harper replaced the head of Election Canada, and I'm just gonna. I mean, I know, of course, the guy resigned. All right, yeah.
Oh,
I put that in quotes.
Though I've got to say too.
But I just like to say it as Stephen Harper replaced him with a more dedicated HarperCon.
There was, I forget which MP it was, but some of the opposition MPs came out and said that it's too serious of a matter for us not to hear a statement from the person who resigned from Elections Canada as the investigator, the head investigator of the robocall scandal.
Yeah.
We need to understand why he quit. We want to hear his reason. And I think that's reasonable.
Well, I think that we should, as his final act, he should summarize where these investigations are at. You know what I mean? And where he thinks they're going. Because like there's how many hundreds of investigations going on right now about separate types of complaints, and how many ridings? I'd like to know where he was with that. And what's going to change about how these investigations are going to be handled with the new guy? Well, we know one thing already.
If we were to have heard him speak about it, then we'd at least have something to judge later on how the other person took the information.
Right now, we'll never know.
Is there a change? Is there a difference? Right now, like you say, we won't ever know. We won't know if there was a change, if it was a bait and switch. You know, it's like, that's horrible.
Well, and I think we need to, because again, this is the status of our democracy. Do we have faith that we've elected this government? You know, in all fairness, I mean, our system is broken, so they can get 38% of the vote and have majority power. You know, when barely over half the people in this country vote, even. You know, so you're looking at less than 20% of eligible voters have consented to be ruled by Stephen Harper and the Harper government. Okay, I know, I get it. The system's broken, but what if he doesn't even have that? What if some of these guys, like, I mean, I'd like to know if my MP Jay Aspin, the Conservative, who supposedly won by 18 votes in a riding that featured all kinds of voter suppression, okay, I want to know if I'm being represented by the guy that we really elected. Do you know what I mean? This is a crisis. You know, this is banana republic kind of corruption BS, like rigging elections. Come on now.
Well, how do you feel about the Supreme Court decision to hold off their decision and to wait? They're entitled to at least 6 months to review it before they make their decision.
I honestly hope they don't wait that long. It shouldn't take them that long to deliberate. I mean, you know, I don't know. I've heard that the decision is expected sooner than later. And now it's a big deal because, first of all, no case like this has ever been heard by the Supreme Court. So I would like them to take their time and make sure they do a good job of this decision, you know, because these guys have to think and research, because they just don't get to go to a textbook and look up the right answer. They gotta come up with the right answer, you know.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't make me feel any better that there's 4 Supreme Court justices handpicked by Stephen Harper, you know, political appointments. You know, that doesn't make me feel very good.
No.
But I mean, just as a matter of general principle, I don't think it's inappropriate for the Supreme Court to take some time to think about this kind of a decision. Because,
that's fair.
You know, I hope it.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
If they take 6 months, then that's just ridiculous. I mean, I would think that a month would be fine. You know, if it gets over a month, then I'm wondering. I mean, are you guys working or what? You know.
Well, let's go a step further and I mean, we'll move into the area of speculation, but let's imagine they come back and they decide to not overturn the decision of the lower court, and they decide that a by-election needs to be called. Mm-hmm. And Harper calls the by-election. Where do you think the issue of cooperation stands right now, as far as we get a chance here with the Etobicoke Center. If it's an if still, because we don't know whether or not the Supreme Court is going to let it stand as delivered. But if they do, how do you feel? Do you think that there's going to be a chance for cooperation, or do you think that's going to be left to the party supporters as voters to decide to cooperate or not? Do you think the parties will cooperate, or that the voters are going to have to be smart voters?
Yeah, see, now here's the thing. Like, I guess a good starting point for this discussion might be the recent statement by Elizabeth May in this regard. She says that she would urge her party to not run a candidate in that election, and she thinks that it would be appropriate for the NDP to also bow out of that. Now, I guess what it is, her way of justifying that is, A, she says she's always been for cooperation, and B, the only person that is conceivably out of a seat that he should have had, who might have won, is Boris from the Liberals, you know. And that makes sense, but of course, you know what's going to happen if the Greens and the NDP stay off that ballot? Then the Conservatives are going to say it's ganging up. He didn't win in the first place, but of course he's going to win now because, you know what I mean? They're all teaming up now.
Well, I'll make a prediction here.
I'd almost rather, because the guy's up 20 points in the polls anyway. You know what I mean?
Well, Stephen Harper won't get that chance because here's my prediction: the Greens won't run a candidate, and the NDP will. And we'll get to see how NDP voters decide to respond. Whether I'm not suggesting that the NDP candidate would have a chance at winning. I really hope that that the Liberal candidate who lost by 26 votes, who has only 26 votes to pick up, where the NDP candidate is a distant third in that riding, I believe. So the question becomes, how do NDP voters react in this riding? Do they abstain? Do they go out and vote Liberal? Do they go out and vote NDP? And if it happens, it's going to give us a little glimpse. You know, it is one riding, so to take it and spread everything that happens in that riding across other ridings isn't fair either. But I mean, it's going to show us in one riding, anyways, what voters are thinking in this. You know, it is a different choice. This is one thing that is true, and people are they take this and they stretch it too far. They say the election that occurred before. You know, things have happened since then and it won't be the same election. It's like, of course it won't be the same election. That's totally unrealistic. When you redo an election, you're having a second election to verify the results of the constituents. You can't rehave the first election. Right. You would need a time machine.
We have to move past that. That first election didn't work out right. There was irregularities. We don't have faith in the result. So this we should. I would hope that we could just think about this as a brand new spanking election. Now, I would be very hesitant to do an ad hoc kind of deal between parties to gang up on the Conservative candidate in this situation. The reason is because it hands the HarperCons a propaganda weapon that they can use into the future. That there is cooperation between. So you're voting for the Liberals, then you're also voting for the NDP, the coalition of Greens, flaky environmentalists, union henchmen, and the Liberals. You know what I mean? So I don't like the idea of handing them this propaganda weapon and saying, oh, this guy won only because it was a coalition effort to defeat our legitimately elected candidate. It'd be fine. It would be totally fine with me if they just fielded the same candidates. And then my preferred method of cooperation has always been to do extensive polling in the riding to see where everyone's at and let the strategic voters do their work. Run a Green candidate, run an NDP candidate, run the Liberal guy, and of course, I mean, I suppose the Conservative guy is going to run again too. Do polling, let the strategic voters do their work.